My name is Hernan Humana, or Hernan Humana actually, and I am a professor at York University, and I've been coaching volleyball. I have kind of two lives. I am an academic. I'm a sociologist by studies, by trade, I guess, and a volleyball coach. I've been coaching volleyball, I think. It feels like all my life, and that is a good feeling. The book, it's a combination of factors. One of them, I teach a course connected to sports and politics, and as a result, I've been telling my students for the last 30 years about some of the experiences that I went through in Chile. And the question from them all the time has been, where can I read more about these experiences? And it was nothing about it. Chile has been covered throughout the years since the military took over in 1973, September 11th, I may remind people, in 1973. But a lot has been written, but nothing from an athlete's perspective, what athletes representing the country went through when the dictatorship was on. So that was kind of interesting, and that was a huge gap in how to understand what happened in Chile. So that's one reason. The other reason, my kids, Melissa and Felipe, they knew some of the stories, but they always got surprised when I told them a new story and said, "Daddy, you have so many stories. Why don't you write them?" I want to know everything. And so I think that was maybe the most powerful reason why I began to write this story. I was 20. I was very naive, very idealistic. I was in the national team. I was in my third year university, and I thought, and everybody was leaving the country. Everybody was running away because they were being persecuted. So I thought, why don't I stay and help? There were a lot of friends who were being persecuted, who were underground, who were in jail, who were in concentration camps, and their families, wives, children, they were with nothing. And so I had some freedom and some space, I guess, at that time to have an income. I was working for the Chilean Olympic Committee, training some young kids in what it was called the talent school, modeled after the sports schools in Eastern Europe and the Soviet Union at the time. And so I had an income and I could help those people as well. So my decision to stay was, as I said, a combination of I still want to play volleyball for the national team, and I know it's dangerous. I know my family is going to have to go to Canada, but I'm staying. And it was difficult because some of the places, in fact, the place where we play all our international games was a concentration camp at one point, right after the coup, and people were tortured. And the most famous Chilean singer, and my favorite singer, Victor Jara, he was tortured and killed in the stadium, in the gymnasium. It was called a stadium, but it was a gymnasium actually, where he was killed. And that's where we played our international games. And the change rooms is where torture took place, and on and on and on. So it was tough. It was not easy to play, and it was not easy to wear the national shirt with the name of a country that it was a country that very few other countries around the world at the time accepted or recognized or respected because of the violations to human rights and killings and torture. And so it was tough. It was tough to represent that country, to play it for that country, and to put that uniform, as I mentioned in the book, is a blood-soaked uniform. I think what I realized is that that's the general perception when you're playing for a national team. Basically, you're representing the country and therefore the government. The way I deal with it is I was representing whoever I wanted to represent. In other words, I had the power in my mind to choose who I was representing. And so to me, I was representing those who were being killed, and those who were being tortured, and those who were being persecuted, those who had to leave the country, my own family who was here in Canada. So that's the people I was representing, and I selected that. Nobody could impose that on me. And that was a bit naive as well, because in fact, who decides who I'm representing is the media. It's the perception as well of most of the people. And I'm sure some people whose relatives were being persecuted and tortured could have looked at me and said, how do you dare to do that, to represent this government? My answer, it's not a difficult, I mean, it's a difficult one, but my answer always was, listen, if I am not representing, I'm wearing this uniform, somebody else is going to come and do it. And maybe somebody else is going to be somebody who is in fact supporting the dictatorship regime. Is that what you want? Do you prefer someone supporting the dictatorship, playing for the country? Or do you prefer someone who you know that I'm not supporting or you may know that I'm not supporting the government? Isn't that better? So that was always my fallback. Now, this is not black and white, and this is not 100%. At times I felt shameful to be representing it, absolutely. Particularly abroad, when we went to play in some other countries and people started screaming and yelling at us that we were criminals and blah, blah, blah. That was tough and tougher, and it made quite obvious that we were representing a dictatorship regime. The situation got worse and worse. The violation of human rights, the torture, the killings, the repression, the diminishing of social space became smaller and smaller. But what the tipping point in my situation was my father here in Toronto. Remember, my family had been here for 5 years, and by then they had kind of found a niche, a place here in Toronto and in Canadian society, and they were putting together this bilingual newspaper. Actually, at the time, it was not bilingual; it was just Spanish newspaper, Opinion, and that newspaper was an anti-dictatorship paper. And I don't know how. Well, maybe they didn't think about it, but they didn't think that Chile and Chilean authorities were going to get a hold of that newspaper. Surely enough, remember that Chile had an embassy here and a consulate in Toronto. So the military had a kind of a foot here in Toronto. And surely enough, somehow the paper made it to Chile. And at a meeting of the Chilean Olympic Committee one night, one military man opened his briefcase and came out with the paper and said, look at what Mr. Humana's family and father in this case, is doing in Toronto against our government. So instead of, and they were discussing to give me a raise or to give me a different position within the talent school, the School for Talent Athletes, they say, why don't we cut his throat instead of raising his salary? After the meeting that night, immediately a friend of mine who was a doctor with the Chilean Olympic Committee called me and said, Hernan, your time has arrived. I think you need to get out of the country. This is not healthy for you any longer. And it coincided with the fact that I had just graduated from university as well in Chile. So I was done with school, and my life was on the line now. And so soon afterwards, I was on my way to Canada. A year after, they sent me a note, a phone call. They were not internet back then. That's how old I am. It was not internet, so they called me and said, Hernan, we are playing a qualifier for the World Championships in '82 in Argentina. It was the World Championships. Canada did go to that World Championships, actually. Will you help us to qualify for the World Championships? You have been a member of the team for 10 years and blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, am I going to be safe to go back? Am I going to survive? I mean, I know if you're calling me, I assume you have talked to people, and they say, yeah, they say that you can come, and that will be okay. So I did go back a year after, and it was difficult. Again, the games were played the same place where, some of my friends had been tortured, and so it was not easy. And we did qualify. We beat Venezuela, a very good team. Venezuela has beaten Canada a few times, so it's a good team, and we beat them. And we almost had Argentina, the same Argentinian team that is going to beat Brazil at the Olympics. We had them. We lost 3-1, but it was a close game. So it was, I think, the best Chile has ever done internationally, and that was that tournament in 1981. And as soon as the tournament was done, I came back and I joined York University, and the rest is just history. And then I have been back a few times to talk, mainly to give talks about sport and politics, about the Olympics, about volleyball. And but in the last 10 years, I haven't been. The last time was 2006, so I haven't been in Chile in a while. And the reason is, in the summer now, I travel with Melissa, and I travel with Felipe, and I go with them to their tournaments, and so I don't have much time to go to Chile. There are so many Canadians who came from even worse situations than mine. The people who came from Vietnam, they went through hell way bigger than the hell I was coming from. And so many Canadians can actually, I think, relate to that. It's the new generations of Canadians, perhaps, that they will have a hard time understanding what it's like to be taken from just you walking on the street and taken by a car that stops by, and then you disappear and you're never found again. And that happens to quite a few friends of mine that they disappeared, and that was in 1974, and their bodies never to be found. So that is, I think, very hard for any Canadian person who has not been exposed to that to understand that your friend, your neighbor tomorrow could disappear and it's gone. And you'll never, never, never see that person again. I did learn a lot of things. One that I'm very fortunate. I think I was born with a star above my head. I don't know how I survived. I should have not. I don't know how I survived that period. Being so public to, as you know, before every game, people sing the national anthems in every country, including here in Canada. And so did in Chile, and I never did sing the national anthem. So it was so obvious that I was not supporting the government. And I had long hair. Those of you who have seen me pictures of that time, they know that, I was a hippie. I was an anti-establishment person, and so I learned that I was lucky to be alive, and I had very good friends. Some of them that I didn't know they existed. By that I mean people who protected me in the Chile Olympic Committee. That I learned that almost the day I was leaving the country, that they have been protecting me and supporting me. Why? No idea. So I learned that I've been very fortunate in life, and look at now in Canada how lucky I am to have been, having all the experiences that I have had here in Canada. So I've been very fortunate. So that's one thing I learned, and I'm a bit able to adapt to situations without compromising my belief system that much, that I can adapt and I can close my mouth if that's necessary, depending on the circumstances, or I can open my mouth if I feel that that's the thing to do. I think you'll enjoy it. It's a good story. I always knew it was a good story. The question was I able to write well the story? And based on the feedback and reviews that from people who have read it, it's a good story. You'll enjoy it. So it's a good book. And it's called, again, Playing Under the Gun, An Athlete's Tale of Survival in 1970s Chile. So enjoy it.